Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Next Gen training. It's okay not to be okay, how to navigate mental health in the workplace. I'm Candace Thorson, managing editor at GovLoop, and today I have the extra pleasure of being your moderator. Before we get into the content, though, I really do want to give a special thank you to our Alliance partners, GovEvents and Blue Cross Blue Shield, for helping us put on Next Gen training, and especially for making the October 25th virtual summit free to all attendees. You can find out more information about the summit in the resources section of your screen today, including some information on the great breakout sessions we have. But today, right now, we're here to talk about mental health. And I'm going to start with a pretty astonishing statistic, I think. According to a 2021 report by Mindshare Partners, 76% of US workers reported experiencing at least one symptom of a mental health condition. That means that 3 out of 4 of your colleagues may be struggling with a mental health challenge. And the average person spends 90,000 hours of their life working, 90,000 hours. And that underscores the critical importance of promoting and navigating mental health awareness in the workplace. So how can we help our offices, wherever they happen to be a place for mental health support? We have 2 experts today who are going to share with us how to identify, address, and talk about mental health at work. But before we get into that, I have some quick housekeeping, so just bear with me for a few moments. If you're on Twitter, please share what you learn using the hashtag NextGenGov. We have great resources available for you on the console, as we always do, so make sure you check them out. We also have closed captioning. You can access that feature on the bottom right-hand side of your media player. We don't want you to have technical problems, but they happen. So if you run into those, use the Ask a Question tab, and Maddie, my colleague, will help you out. And you can ask our questions of our experts in that same portal, and they definitely want to hear from you. So feel free to do that. There's an open chat, so you can chat among your fellow attendees, and you access that by using the blue group chat button in the middle of your screen. And we also want you to check your inboxes tomorrow, because we're recording this training and are going to email you a link to the entire session. And finally, we are giving out 1 CPE credit for your participation today. So be sure to take all 3 polls, participate in the entire session, and then fill out the post-event evaluation form to get your credit. So while we have our first poll up, we're interested in knowing what your experience in government is. I want to introduce our speakers. Joining us are Thomas O'Keefe. He is former Customs and Border Protection Officer, and we have Emily Harmon, U.S. Government Account Director with Positive Intelligence. So thank you much for being here, guys. I want to start off and just sort of lay the groundwork, and I want to go back to that 2021 study I mentioned a minute ago, in which 76% of U.S. workers have some part of a mental health condition. That's 3 out of every 4 workers. So what words would you use? How would you describe the mental health landscape for government employees? And I'll start with you first, Thomas, and then Emily jump in.
Thank you. Thank you, Candace, and thank you, NextGen and GovLoop and everybody involved in this. It's pretty simple. I would say the whole question over how important is it? It's not a matter of life and death. It's more important than that. And I will use myself with other examples. 75%. Think about that number, and think about what mental health could mean, school shootings, etc. We're all suffering. And I will yield to my presentation partner, Emily.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here today. This is a very important topic. I would say I talk to government organizations quite a bit, employees from government organizations, and burnout is a big issue. Stress, too much to do, too little resources, return to work. That's causing stress for some people. And I think this is an important topic because according to the World Economic Forum, the cost of mental health conditions will rise to $6 trillion globally by 2030. That's
Wow.
7 years away. So $6 trillion, we can't afford this. So what can we do now to kind of prevent that from happening? There are definitely some actions we can take, and I think that's that's information that we'll get into in this presentation.
Right.
And if I could, please, I would just say that to build on what Emily just said, I have a specific example. I wouldn't mind spending 600 million. I think she might agree with me if it was all quality care. Some of the care out there is tantamount to voodoo. Some of it's great, and it's up to the patient to find it out. We've got to get away from that too. EAP is great. I have some issues with EAP, but they are great. They have helped me, and they've hurt me in my own personal life stories. Thanks.
Sure. Moving on to the next question. There are resources out there for employees to use, right? But why do employees resist using them? And I guess what resources, I'll back up, I guess. What resources exist for government employees, and how can people find them? And then why do they resist them? So I don't know. Emily, do you want to start off with that? Answer whatever part of the question. I realize that's just three questions at you at once.
Yeah. The best way to find them is probably through your supervisor or your HR office. I used to work for the federal government. I worked 34 years for the Navy as both an officer and a civilian. And I retired as a senior executive. And so I know I've been a supervisor before. And so one of the big programs out there that everybody knows about is the Employee Assistance Program. And recently, OPM came out asking agency leaders to create employee wellness programs, something that would supplement the Employee Assistance Program. But I didn't use the EAP that much when I was a civilian. I think I used it once. And I remember when I was a supervisor that when somebody had a performance or a time and attendance problem, that's when we were required to put in the letter to them that you have this EAP resource. That is a big thing that leads to the stigma. It means you only go there when you're having a problem.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the stigma.
Yeah. I would just say I may have misspoke. EAP is always the first to go to place to go for federal employees. The problem with EAP, and I'm going to get into this a little tangentially and stop me if you have to, Candace. The problem with EAP is when it is, I hate to use the nomenclature of the day, but when it's weaponized, when agencies use it to find out things that they should find out through other means. They misuse the mental health treatment, or the low bid causes them to be flippant. I've had people get flippant to me when I called in for another employee, made fun of her name. It rhymes with a Beatles song, and I'm not going to divulge anymore, but made fun of her name. I couldn't believe it. And this was the direct line to EAP. And I've had EAP guys and girls and whatever pronoun that have been superlative. They have just been, they're why I'm alive today. I want to be sure I get that across. But they come with a little clattering collateral as federal employees. And by the way, thank you very much, Emily, for your service. I just want to say that, you've got to be careful. Don't rule it out. Try it. Be open-minded. But if you run into problems, it depends on what contract from administration to administration the EAP can have. We've had them come to our training sessions in the union, so I'm very well versed on this. I don't want to take a lot of time on this, but it can be a hit and miss if I'm making sense. And I'll yield back.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least Congress has noticed this. I mean, I'm looking right now at an employee wellness programs guidebook that OPM put together, and it says in here that Title 5 USC 7901 Public Law 7958 enables each agency to establish a health service program to promote and maintain the physical and mental fitness of employees. And that's what, I represent Positive Intelligence as their director of government contracting. That mental fitness strengthening program changed my life. And that's why I'm back working with the federal government again to introduce it to government agencies, because when we strengthen our mental fitness, we're better able to handle life's challenges with a positive rather than a negative mindset. And we could instill a culture across the federal government of strengthened mental fitness that will help save taxpayer dollars so we don't have to pay for this pending $6 trillion
with the T
bill coming up, across the world. But still, it's going to impact government. And I think we, I don't think it's right to say, well, and no one's that I know is saying this, but federal employee, you got to deal with that on your own personal time. This is work. No, I think with COVID, we recognize personal is professional. You've got to know, you bring your whole self to work. You don't leave part of yourself at the door when you go to work, or you shouldn't have to.
Right. And it takes a lot of guts, I think, to acknowledge that you need some assistance. So right there, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to, I mean, I can't even imagine somebody, like you were saying, Thomas, if somebody, makes fun of a name or whatever, makes fun of your need for help, that's just wrong on so many levels. So as far as just listening to you, would you say that the biggest barrier to addressing, well, what would be the biggest barrier to addressing mental health in government as far as you're concerned?
Is that to me?
Well, it can be for either of you, but since you spoke first, sure. Go ahead, Tom.
That's a tough question to answer because that's one piece of a huge puzzle, and I can't say enough how well Emily's doing in presenting. I'm having a hard time. I'm not in the best of health right now, so she's covering a lot of things that I would want to cover. But I can't emphasize enough how important it is. I don't care who pays for it as long as it's quality care. Think about this. I have a homogenistic federal career. One agency pretty much at a border crossing, the same one my whole life. Okay. Those people all carry guns. You really want them, 3/4 of them, to be looking for mental health problems? And think of that around the country and all the different federal agencies that carry guns and weapons and make command decisions, and commanders like in the Navy, like my co-presenter, Emily. That's why this is so. I don't care who pays for it. If it's the taxpayers, I want to get their best bang for their buck. I'll tell you that. But somebody's got to pay for this. It's got to be. It's more important than health insurance. Yield.
You raise an interesting point about directly relating to mission. I mean, whether your agency carries guns or not, the kind of mental health position you're in can directly affect your, serving constituents or whatever your agency mission happens to be ultimately. I didn't mean to cut you off, Emily. If you want to respond to that.
I would tie it to mission. I just gave a TEDx talk on this topic for the Defense Acquisition University. Now, if you go to DAU's website, you could register, and then if you're a government employee, and you could watch my TEDx talk. But the topic of that talk was, how do we do defense differently? So some people talked about technology things. I talked about our mind. Because look, these government organizations are all looking to get different results, to improve their results, to give good customer service, all those things to really accomplish their mission. Well, if you understand how our brain works, our thoughts generate our emotions and our feelings, which lead us to take action or inaction, which gives us our results. So what I see from when I worked in the federal government, and now I've, we got to do this differently. I see us requesting the law to be changed, requesting we need more money, we need to reorganize, we need a different leader. Well, what I learned when I retired in 2019 is when we point our finger at a circumstance or a situation, like Congress needs to do this, or the president needs to do that, or my boss this, we have 3 pointing back at us. So what I say is we all need to take a look at ourselves, because that's where it starts. And you can do all the reorganizing, writing policies, all the things you want. It boils down to people and their thoughts. And so that's what we've got to get to. We've got to do something completely different, which is helping people understand their thoughts. We think 70,000 thoughts a day, 95% of them are repetitive. So how do we become more aware of our thoughts and then realize, well, what else could be true, and create a different narrative in our minds?
That's really interesting. We have, I didn't realize those were those statistics. That many are repetitive. You said that. I'm just trying to think about how often, but I
don't remember where I got that, but that was in my TEDx.
That is true. I believe you. That's really
same thought. I can't cite this. I can't cite this, but we also worry about that which we have no control over, and will probably be okay anyway. I don't know the number, thoughts we have. I'm not that well prepared, but think about that too. We worry about things endlessly that will not come to fruition, that will not have any impact on us, yet affect our performance, our mission, everything else. That's the point I was trying to make. Muscle memory.
Yeah, it already happened.
It's
you
happened.
Can't change the past. They've already happened.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's happened. I'm not saying it well, but I'm trying to be succinct. She's saying it best. Emily's saying it best. And you've got to put it all together. It starts with you. Absolutely. You have to know what you're looking for.
So this happened to me the other day. Even though I practice positive intelligence, I've got pretty strong mental fitness. I have a son and his wife, and I'm trying to take his grandson one last hurrah to the beach. So I was messaging them, and Corinne wasn't responding to my messages. So my mind said, my saboteur, if you learn positive intelligence, and my brain said, because our brains will go figure out how to make sense of this, how to make sense that Corinne is not responding to me. Well, Emily, Marshall, my grandson, is 7. So you know that when William, my son, when your son was 7, you got a divorce. So clearly your son and his wife are getting a divorce, and that's why she's not responding.
Oh my gosh.
I could dwell on that, stress about it. It will impact my work. It will impact my work. You can say it won't, but it would. I could just be so stressed about that. But I could also say, wait a second. What else could be true? So Corinne was sick, but it could have impacted my relationships, my performance at work, my well-being. That's an example of how our mind works.
Yeah.
And if we're not aware, we're not able to stop and question that thought.
It's like when people you work with or family or whoever is not as friendly or something as usual. They're sort of like off, and then you blame it on you. Like, why are they ticked off at me today? What did I do wrong? And it's just like, they could be having a bad day. That has nothing to do with you. They could have a headache or something, but it's like you interpret it like somehow it's your fault, and you just make stuff up. You really have no way to do that. We have a question from the chat, actually. How do we prepare supervisors to embrace authenticity in employees? So how do we get supervisors to be more accepting of?
I'll take a shot if she does.
Sure.
Probably break. I would say, again, it goes back to understanding the totality of mental health. It goes back to understanding that it may not be what you think it is, like she just said. That's brilliant. That helps me personally, actually. So you have to get your supervisors engaged. And yet another task. I mean, they're already overwhelmed. I never was a supervisor, but I was a union president for 25 years. I had what I call the privilege of watching the autopsy of management. The metaphor, I'll explain some other time. And I've seen good ones and I've seen bad ones. The good ones are communicative. They get engaged. They don't, every time they get a task, they're not, oh no, not another thing. A lot of them are asking me for this. A lot of them come to me for this. A lot of them, it still hasn't, whether we have laws or Congress or anything else, it still has not permeated the stereotypical handling of the crazy person, vis-a-vis how Hollywood handles it, et cetera, et cetera. I believe in everything. I guess I've practiced without knowing positive, whatever Emily teaches. And that's good because I do those things and I have to work through every issue. But back to the question at hand, you got to get these supervisors. First of all, you got to make sure you're paying them enough. That's a whole nother discussion. Make sure that they know they're responsible for somebody's life when they make this decision, not to misuse employee assistance. It covers a lot of things if you get them in early. Sorry, yield.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that to get somebody else to change is really hard. Okay, Thomas knows this. I went through, and I can tell you, I learned a lot from my son being an alcoholic because I wanted to help him. I was looking at him. And so we can look at our supervisor but we have 3 coming back at us. So if because of mirror neurons in our brain, if you take the positive intelligence saboteur assessment, which I provided as resources, you can learn what saboteurs in your mind are kind of generating certain thoughts. And if you're hijacked by your saboteur and stressed out and upset when you're dealing with your boss is going to be upset too. So I have found that when I looked at the three fingers pointing back at me and I changed my way of being, other people around me changed too without even realizing it, because they were reacting to me. So I think it first starts with looking at ourselves. That's where I would start. And the other thing I would say is what I've seen in federal government. I've worked in federal government for 34 years, 38 if you count my time at the Naval Academy. The government wants training. We go and we train people and we expect them to come back and change. That's 20% of it. It's like me telling you, in order to get stronger, you've got to lift weights. And you know that. You've got the 20% insight. But you have to lift the weights to get stronger. And with mental fitness, so that you can create new neural pathways in your brain, you have to do short little exercises throughout the day. And you will find that you are changing your way of being, and you will find your whole world around you change without you even making it change.
That's very interesting. I never thought about it that way. We have more comments and questions coming in the chat that I just want to make sure we address. One person wrote, I think some people are fearful of requesting help. How do people find help without the whole world finding out? I think it ties in with it being vulnerable. And, it takes a lot. You put yourself out there, especially to a supervisor. That can be kind of hard. Even if you really need the help. I mean, it is hard. So, Thomas, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, sorry. I would say first and foremost, most federal employees are covered by a collective bargaining agreement and/or a union. They're supposed to be in the operative word, but find somebody that can direct you to EAP that isn't in direct line of the chain of command, because that'll take away some of the nervousness. And there's plenty of people around us, fellow employees, peers, another supervisor. Tell them what's going on and get to EAP as soon as possible. If you find that to be problematic, then you've got to, but again, I agree so much with Emily. It's so brilliant what she's saying. I used to say that all the time. That's why Bill Clinton doesn't point anymore, because somebody told him that. He uses his fingers like this. It's so valid, 3 point back. You've got to acknowledge that you have a problem first to seek out mental health. That has got to be the first step before we get into anything else. That's tough. Yield.
I'd say,
I'd like to get.
I know it's different by organizations, but trust has got to be built within the federal government where you can trust that somebody's not going to say something, and they really shouldn't, because I would assume that it's protected by the Privacy Act. So sometimes if you're not sure about your supervisor, maybe you have a mentor within that organization that you can talk to. It's really hard to answer that question without knowing the organization. But I think for the federal government, they want to change, with respect to people using EAPs and these wellness plans, and they're going to have to change the culture to create a more culture of trust and emotional intelligence and psychological safety in order for people to do this. And I think the organizations that do that are going to be able to better retain their people. I think within the federal government, we don't really run like a business, right? So when somebody leaves, it's like, oh, they left. But if you looked at the cost of somebody leaving, it's a lot. And so I think that maybe organizations will start to look at that and try to retain their people.
That's a good point about looking to a mentor, because sometimes that's the most helpful. Sometimes we all have somebody who can be not necessarily in the chain of command, but can be really a guidepost for us. I'd like to switch a little bit and talk about hybrid and remote work, because, when the federal government and lots of companies and agencies and such went to remote work, or at least partly remote work in 2020, and have somewhat shifted back and everything, depending on the study you see, it's either been great for mental health or it's hurt mental health. And now that the Biden administration really wants to get people back into the office starting this fall and really put an end to hybrid work as much as possible, that's got to be hard for people who are used to at least some of the time working from home. So what are your thoughts on how on the state of hybrid and remote work? Like what impact has it been having on mental health in your experience? Will it have? Because not just federal agencies, I mean, they're going to be going back into the office more, but even in the private world, like companies like, Silicon Valley, Google wants their people in the office. So, which is, it's kind of ironic to me, but anyway, that's beside the point. But what are your thoughts on mental health? And Thomas, I think you seem like you want to say something, so I'll definitely start with you.
I will yield if Emily has something before me.
Okay. I would say now, like I work from home. I'm retired, so I'm not one of the employees going back. If I had to go back, I could understand how that could feel to somebody like who's an introvert like me, kind of stressful. And I think that understanding our thoughts about it and questioning why we're thinking that way and looking at what's another way to think about this, because through positive intelligence, strengthening your mental fitness, we learned that we can find a gift and an opportunity in every situation. So instead of focusing on the negative, what is some positive here, and how can I use that positive? And I think whatever we focus our mind on is what we see. And we don't see other options and things like that if we're so focused on this is bad, this is terrible, all of our stress, then that's what we're going to see. And another thing I would say is all of our stress is caused by thinking about the past, and the future. If we are more in the present moment and not stressing about that stuff, then we can just, it's easier to handle. But it's where you focus your attention, you will see that in your life. So if you focus on the bad, that's what you're going to see.
Yeah. I know, like I used to work, I for more than 20 years, I commuted an hour each way to work. I would often get home. My days lasted really long. I'd often get home at 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. And GovLoop is 100% remote. And I look at the clock now and I thought, how in the world did I do this? Like it could be 7:30 or 8 o'clock and I'm ready to put my pajamas on and read a book or something. And that's when I would have been getting home and thinking about making dinner. I mean, this is an alien world to me that I can't even imagine that I actually did for more than 20 years. So when I thought, wow.
Yeah, maybe there's other options. Maybe people have more power than they're giving themselves to create their work-life environment that suits them.
Yeah, right? Thomas, I'm sorry. I want to give you a chance. I just started talking.
I'm working on this. Listen, again, I speak from a monolithic, homogenistic, one agency. But I fought wars at a bargaining table for 40,000 plus people in contracts about this. And the answer is, it depends. It depends. There's good and there's bad. I can see the agencies or the mission requirement. A lot of our people, you can't do at home. A uniformed armed custom officer, you can't work at home. I want to be careful here because I don't want to get anybody that's still working in trouble that helped me, but they helped me by letting me say, you stay home as long as you want. I had a particularly good boss. I had a particularly good contract nationally with the AP that they would add visits onto. They were behind me 100%. And I was able to retire with dignity for all those reasons. So, it all depends. There are other people during the same time frame. They weren't liked as much. I don't know what all the other tangential reasons were they were denied or why they want to go back. Now, it's very difficult questions. My bottom line answer is there are some good qualities. And I never thought I'd say this in remote and video conferencing. I used to fight that tooth and nail. Now I'm a believer. And there's a lot of legitimacy in the agencies, plural, saying, we want you back here. But then again, there's another little part. Again, if they can cut down their carbon footprint and release office space, that saves the taxpayers money with a hybrid thing. It's a very complicated question. It's a very complicated question. And the answer is still, it depends. Thanks.
I'm looking through some of the comments and everything, and mental health stability. My mental health stability will be at higher risk when working in the office full time. Employees in tech jobs don't want to go back to the office. My team's morale took a huge hit when our agency announced they wanted to move away from remote work. I'm worried about losing people. I strongly prefer hybrid or remote work. The idea of going back is not thrilling to me. It's so much easier to manage mental health, let alone general health, if you're working from home. I wonder if this, and I think I know the answer to this question, but do you think that there's any, is there an age divide or a gender divide as far as, certain demographic groups are more inclined to request mental health support or not, or is that changing, or does it totally not make a difference anymore?
I think it's changing. I'm just like Emily, and that's all I want to say. I didn't want to be interrupted, but I'm retired. It really doesn't matter to me. I got a business. I try to help people through this. If I can travel, I will. If I can't, I can't. No big deal. I got a pension. So,
right.
Yield.
I mean,
Do you have any thoughts on that, Emily?
I definitely feel for people that are having to go back to work. And I would say that is what it is, though. That's the situation now. So if we resist it, we're resisting what is. Maybe there are ways to get creative. And it's really hard to get creative when we're in the left side of our brain. The left side is the survival side of our brain, and where we're stressed. If you're feeling any negative emotions like stress, overwhelm, anxiety, you're going to have a really hard time seeing other options or coming up with creative solutions. So maybe as people come back to work, there's an ability for teams to get together and talk about it, share their feelings, and come up with other solutions that may help with the return to work. That's something that I would say, but I would say you can only be like creative and innovative like that when you're more on the right side of your brain, where you have access to the empathy circuitry, where you have empathy for others and for yourself, where you can really get calm and clear-headed and be creative and innovative. So that's something maybe the teams could get together and say, okay, this is what it is. It's not changing that we're being required to come back to work. But what are some creative ways that we can make it work for ourselves?
I was thinking, like, if I had to go back to the office full time, how would I, because I have gotten so used to remote work, like how would I adjust? And one thing I thought is I made it work for more than 20 years. I managed to survive it. I mean, there were good things that I do miss. I mean, I know this sounds silly, but I have a closet full of clothes that I'm not wearing anymore. I mean, I don't wear sweatpants, but I mean, like I wore business suits and dress clothes and stuff. They're going to waste. So I would get to wear those again. I would get to do this, that, or the other thing. So I was trying to find, imagining if I had to go back, I was trying to focus on the things that I did like, that I kind of miss now. But admittedly, I'd have to do a lot more refocusing because that was, kind of hard. I just want to draw everybody's attention. There's our next poll question. So if you want the CPE credit, you'll need to make sure to answer that. Is your organization talking more about mental health in 2023 than in previous years? Yes, no, somewhat they are, or you're unsure. So I just want to kind of move on a little bit. If an organization wants to improve? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Thomas.
Before you do, I just want to say about that. Even if we come out with is, you got to go back. At least we're acknowledging that may be a reason to seek mental health. That may cause, that may knock you off your game. I always didn't like the saying, it is what it is, because of that very reason. There's still something you can do. At that point you can say, I need some help getting through this. I'm a gun carrying cop. I can't get I got to go to the work site. Counselor, help me. We got to at least do that. That's all I wanted to say.
Right.
Thanks.
I agree with not saying it is. I did that a lot in my life. When you say it is what it is, then you're not acknowledging the feelings that you have about it. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, I did a post today about the importance of acknowledging our feelings, because feelings and thoughts are energy and they're kind of going through our body. And when one of my podcast guests, I used to host the Onward podcast, she said, when you shove your feelings to the basement, they lift weights and they will come out at some point. And so when you have a really bad stressor in your life or whatever, so I'm saying feel your feelings about it and acknowledge them and feel the grief about having to return to work and the stress and name those feelings and then figure out, the best way to approach it, but not ignoring your feelings. And I agree, Thomas, getting mental health help about this. Sometimes it's very hard for us to see our own thoughts and how they're impacting us. That's what I learned when I became a coach, having a coach to ask empowering questions to help you, or a counselor, through EAP to help you work it out. It's very hard to do on your own. And that's why I think, the government's got these EAPs, and I don't know how well they're used and how effective they are, but definitely don't just shove your feelings to the basement.
There's one comment here that I want to mention, and then we'll move on to our next question. But my anxiety went crazy when I was told we were going back 1 day a week originally, and now 2 days a week. I've redecorated my workspace, and now I look forward to being there. So it sounds like that person found some positive in what they're doing. So going to the next question. If an organization wants to improve its mental health standing, it recognizes that it needs some improvement. What should it do first?
Make it a priority.
Okay.
Yeah, make it a priority. I agree with Thomas. But I, as the director of government contracts for government accounts for Positive Intelligence, I get a lot of calls asking, can you come train on this? And sure, I can come give a 2-hour presentation on this. You can listen to this presentation. This is all like the insight. You can read a book about how to strengthen your mental fitness. You can read a blog about it. Those are all helpful, but they're not going to really create new neural pathways in your mind and help you become more aware of your thoughts so that you can change your results. And so I would recommend organizations take a look at the Positive Intelligence website, which I've shared in the comments, and have their employees take there's 2 assessments that are free on that website. One is the saboteur assessment. So you can learn, what is it in your mind that's generating these thoughts? And I'll just name them. Is it your judge that judges other people, circumstances, situations, and yourself? Is it the avoider, the controller, the hyperachiever, the hyper-rational, the pleaser, the restless, the stickler, the victim? You can probably see it's easy to see your boss in one of those names. Can you see yourself in any of them? Because we all have them, because that's the way our mind works. So once you become aware of that, you can take that assessment. It'll tell you what your top saboteurs are. There's another assessment you can take that'll tell you your PQ score, or what % of the time you're impacted and stressed out by these saboteurs. And I'd say that most people are surviving instead of thriving. So as a government leader, do you want an organization that is thriving, or do you want your employees to just be surviving? Positive intelligence and strengthening your mental fitness is one way. I'm sure you can do your market research and find other ways. But I would encourage folks to look at beyond training. There's other ways that you can really strengthen that mental fitness and really make a change, a sustained positive change.
I have a question. Like the idea of journaling, because I was told like a long time ago, if you write things in a journal, it helps. And I did for a long time, and it really helped, I have to admit. But then honestly, I got lazy and I just stopped doing it. But it does help to sort of get all your stuff out on a page, because it's very cathartic, first of all. And then sometimes you can look back and realize, I've looked back at journals I made like 20, 30 years ago and thought, wow, I thought this. Is that like, as far as the neural pathways and stuff that you're talking about, is journals a really good way? I mean, I'm sure it can't hurt, but is that a really helpful way to improve your mental health, or is that like not nearly enough? Or I guess what are your thoughts?
Journaling is helpful because it helps you become more aware of your thoughts. And for example, if you have a hyperachiever saboteur, like I do, you can read the book, Positive Intelligence, I have it behind me, by Shirzad Chamine, and you can learn the general thoughts that saboteur will come up with, and how it impacts your health, your performance, your well-being, your relationships. So my hyperachiever is all focused on getting the job done. And, when I'm focused on that, my energy comes across as I don't really care about your mental health problem, because we've got this mission to get done. Okay. And then you can catch yourself when you're thinking that, and you can, so there's I'll just be really short. There's 3 muscles that you strengthen when you strengthen your mental fitness. One is the saboteur interceptor muscle. You notice when you're stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, any negative emotion, boom, you are in the left side of your brain, and those saboteurs are telling you thoughts that are hijacking you. You do what we call a PQ rep, which is a short, maybe just a little, close your eyes and just focus on your breath, or focus on rubbing 2 fingers together. And you'll see that your mind wanders and you bring it back. Your mind's not going to wander to those thoughts. You're bringing it back. That's your self-command muscle. You are in charge of your brain, not those saboteurs. Then you strengthen your sage muscle, which is your ability to have empathy for yourself and others, curiosity, innovate, and take calm, clear-headed action towards what's most important. And that is your sage muscle. And what you're doing, the sage is on the right side of your brain. So when you notice that you're stressed, you do a PQ rep, you're creating a new neural pathway. So your automatic reaction, maybe in the next few times, isn't going to be as negative as it was. You're going to catch yourself in those thoughts and change your thoughts and change your outcome and change your life.
That's really interesting. These exercises that you're talking about. I'm sorry, Thomas.
Excellent points. Excellent points. Those are all grounding, centering yourself things. I feel like I'm going to one of my sessions for free. Thank you, Emily. I really mean that. Those are valid points. But I have already forgotten what I was really going to talk about. And it was about grounding or something. What were we talking about before this? I'm sorry, because I'm trying to type messages as I'm
journaling.
Journaling. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Emily.
Therapeutic and cathartic, and there's branches that it helps you in your handwriting, your spelling, your grammar. I mean, it does so much for you. And the worst you have is to do what Candace did and laugh a few years later and say, I can't believe I thought that. So those are all good precursory type mental health rounding techniques. I applaud you, Emily. That is very, very good. Thank you.
Is there an example, and I'll start with you, Emily, of an organization, an agency, it could even be in the private world, that is doing mental health really well? And you could it can be anonymous if you don't want to say it specifically, but just some organization that's dealing with mental health for its employees really well.
I could say something about that. I know. Sure. I'm very conscious. I don't want to come across as I'm here to just sell positive intelligence. And the reason I talk about it is because it changed my life, and it's changing other people's lives. And so we've had an organization send several thousand people through the 7-week coaching program. And what that does is it enables a shared common language within the organization. So I can say, Candace, my judge is telling me that you looked at me a little funny. My judge is telling me that you're not happy with this report I just did. And my hyperachiever is stressed out because I want to achieve. Or my avoider's saying, don't talk to Candace about this. So imagine if you were able to have a language like that where everyone understood, wow, oh, Emily, and you can say, let's do a PQ rep together, which is that short little meditation. Let's get in our sage side of the brain and let's brainstorm here, because I'm really not feeling upset with you. Or maybe you'd say, I am feeling upset with you about this report, and my judge is telling me that you just didn't even try. Mm-hmm. And is that true? So if you have this trust and this shared common language, so when you send large groups of people like that through, people learn how to coach each other. You could come up to me and say, Emily, the past few days, you've seemed like you're really stressed. Is there something I can help you with? What if you didn't have to send somebody to an EAP, if the employees were able to help each other through some of this? And it doesn't not everyone's going to get it. Not everyone,
Yeah.
some people are going to say that's woo woo, I'm not doing it, but it is based on science. But just even a third of the organization or a quarter gets it, and then you start to see the culture change.
That's interesting. So it was basically
that's
everybody, not just people who said they had mental health concerns. That's interesting.
Yeah, because guess what? Everyone has a brain.
Support.
Yeah, everyone has a brain, and everyone has the saboteurs. And you, like you said, we're all struggling with some form of mental health challenges, stress.
That's interesting. Thomas, you wanted to say something? You have an example?
I just want to say that helps me. You know, it's really good stuff. At bare minimum, I'm going to be following Emily on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn a lot. I've never seen this before. I'm just ironically saying I'm already doing this stuff. Found it another way is a better way to say it. And I'm just excited. I'm just excited. I think this is what we need, though, is everybody to either go through this program or some other program, so all the words mean the same to everybody. She brings up that point, and that's a good point. You could say my judge is saying this, but only if Candace has been through the same linguistics anyway and understands the linguistics, what that means. You know, if she doesn't understand what a judge and a demon is or whatever words we're using, that's my only point. But I'm going to follow you on LinkedIn, and I think what you're doing and saying is fine. I meant to infer nothing else. If I did, I apologize. Sorry.
I would like to add one more thing. So I started working with Positive Intelligence for them over a year ago. I have not met, they're a worldwide organization. I have not met one employee in person. Yet I am more connected to them than I have been with any of the people that I worked with at work. It's not because of the people, it's because of me. And so when you work with an organization that talks the talk and walks the walk, you will find that you develop that trust and that compassion. And that when somebody comes and says, you look stressed, and if you react to that, you'll like, well, why am I reacting that way? Oh, why am I defensive about that? So look at yourself. But if you have that, like, I'll just share an example. Shahzad Shamin, the founder of the company, he's the founder of the company. He still gets hijacked and stressed sometimes at meetings. So one day he got a little stressed, and somebody in the meeting said, I think we need to do a PQ rep. So instead of saying to Shahzad, you seem stressed, so maybe you don't approach him that way, you say, anyone has the authority to say, I feel the need to do a PQ rep. You stop, you take just a few seconds or a minute to just refocus your brain. Because when he is stressed, because of mirror neurons, other people get stressed. And all these, if you can just picture all these saboteurs running around the office, you know?
Yeah.
So that is the culture that you can develop, and you can develop it even working remotely.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's absolutely accurate. That's all I can say. It's accurate.
Yeah, it is.
I haven't ever taken the course either, so I'd love to. Thank you.
I'm just looking at the time here, and we're actually running out of time. So I just want to sort of give one last question. But if each of you could sort of answer, what would you like our attendees to take away from this? Of all the stuff that we've been talking about, the ideas and stuff, and I'll just start with you, Thomas. What would you like attendees to know?
Thank you. Reach out. Take that first step. If you have to, call me. I made the unfortunate mistake in my career to give my number and email out. It's on this broadcast. I will either direct you or try to help you. I want people to get better. This is a huge, huge problem. It's more important than mental health. So, I mean, than physical health, almost. So just reach out. Get somebody. I think there's 811 now as a suicide prevention. There's some easy number. There's all kinds of resources out there. Tons of resources. Some good, some bad. I might be good for somebody, might be bad for somebody else. Same with Emily, same with NextGen. But don't give up to the demon. Fight him. He is a strong demon. Mental health is about mind, muscle memory. Please hang in there. I'm done. Thank you.
It's very
Thank you
important.
very much.
That's
I
very
would
important.
say, I agree with Thomas, like asking for help. And I would say that a lot of times, because we can't see people's thoughts, and sometimes we're not aware of our thoughts, and we're really hard on ourselves, that we think we're the only ones thinking this or suffering this way. I encourage you to watch Shirzad Shamin, who wrote the book Positive Intelligence, his TED Talk. I think it was a TED Talk, Stanford TED Talk. Just search Shirzad Shamin TED Talk. He shared he read some cards where these business leaders from Stanford sharing their insecurities that they don't want anyone to know. You're not alone, and that in itself can encourage you to get help.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because we think about people who are really successful or really whatever as being almost not infallible, but you know, I can't think of the word, but you know, like yeah, but they're not. They're people too. I just want to thank you, both of you, for being with us today. We've run out of time. We're over time, but I think it's been a really wonderful conversation, and I think we probably helped quite a number of people. So your insight is really, really valuable. Before I go, we do have some quick reminders, everybody. So look in your inboxes tomorrow, like I said, because we're going to send you a link to the on-demand version of this. We have those great resources, additional resources on the console, so make sure to check them out. And I just want to, on behalf of GovLoop and NextGen and our NextGen Alliance partners, GovEvents and Blue Cross Blue Shield, to just really wish you a wonderful afternoon. Say we appreciate so much the work you do, and really hope you enjoyed our training this afternoon. Have a great time. Great afternoon, everyone.
God bless.
Thank you.
You're not alone.